Bankers, according to recent surveys, are one of the professions least trusted by the public, kept off the bottom of that list of shame only by politicians and journalists. Today, we celebrate the achievements of one of the few leaders of the British financial services industry to emerge with credit from the crisis which began in 2008. Graham Beale assumed the position of Chief Executive of the Nationwide Building Society in 2007, just in time to deal with the worst crisis in the sector in living memory, and possibly even since the bursting of the South Sea bubble in the early 18th century. In the 9 years in which he ran the society, while banks and building societies famous internationally for their apparent dependability collapsed or suffered radical restructuring, the Nationwide thrived and grew, strengthening its reputation for integrity. And Graham became recognised, as the Sunday Times put it, as a chief executive who leads by example, running a company based on sound moral principles. A career at the top of a business with assets of over £200 billion, 17,500 employees, and 15 million members and customers was far from Graham Beale's aspirations as a child. He joined this university as a student in 1977, armed with excellent reports from school, where he had been deputy head boy, and with enthusiasms for motorcycling and modern jazz, as well as for his subject, psychology. But inasmuch as he had considered the future, it was a career in marketing that beckoned. The nearest he came to fulfilling that ambition was immediately after his graduation, when he took a temporary job as a sales assistant on the Leicester Mercury. While a student, and like many students before and since, including our Chancellor, Graham had one particularly important life-changing experience. He met his future wife, Ros, in his first week here. They married straight after graduation, Ros securing a good job at the City Council. And Graham recognised that he had a responsibility to support his new family and establish a career of his own. So, as he puts it, as a sensible step, rather than from a burning ambition, he started as an articled clerk with Thomson McLintock, training to be a chartered accountant and developing the skills which have underpinned his subsequent successes in business and informed his response to its challenges. The next critical step was our Honoran's decision in 1985 to take a job at the Anglia Building Society, prompted partly by having done work for Thomson McLintock at the Leicester Building Society. 2 years later, the Anglia merged with the Nationwide, a movement which made it already one of the largest mutuals, businesses which are run for the benefit of those who bank with them or borrow from them. The Nationwide's determination to retain this status and its success in doing so against the trend in the last quarter of the 20th century has set it apart and has formed the basis for its current strength. Graham, who rose to become Divisional Director for Commercial Lending and then Group Finance Director, is a passionate believer in this business model. He very properly acknowledges the influence that his predecessors, Brian Davis and Philip Williamson, have had on him in developing this philosophy. But we recognise his unique contribution both to the Nationwide and to the wider sector in steering them through the storms of 2008 and after, with their members' resources protected and that philosophy intact. Those who know Graham best testify to the passion he brings to everything he sets his hand to. He believes, quite simply, in helping people make the most of their financial affairs. We have seen with our own eyes ample evidence that this has not been the approach of many banks, which have been motivated to make a profit at almost any cost, and which have suffered as a consequence. Under Graham's leadership, and thanks to his well-earned reputation for integrity, the Nationwide stability was never in doubt, and he was able to use this strength to rescue other societies. He was also determined to ensure that the business kept pace with technological change, and his professional standing was recognised when he was elected chairman of the Building Societies Association. His success is further reflected in his recognition by the Times as one of the 7 Business People of the Year in 2015, when he was described as one of the best, if not the best, chief executives in Britain. Earlier this year, the Sunday Times listed the Nationwide as the 3rd best company to work for in the UK, acknowledging its strong social conscience and ranking it top for giving something back. The Queen has appointed Graham Commander of the Order of the British Empire, an honour which in itself symbolises the slow recovery of the reputation of British banking to which Graham has contributed so much. Fittingly, for the head of an organisation which helps so many home buyers, the Nationwide provided nearly half the residential lending in the worst years of the crisis, Graham has had a lifelong enthusiasm for architecture and the restoration of houses. But it is for his restoration of decency and our faith in the financial services sector more than anything else that we are particularly proud of this distinguished and honourable alumnus. Mr. Chancellor, on the recommendation of the Senate and the Council, I present Graham John Beale, that you may confer on him the honorary degree of Doctor of Laws.
And the Leicester graduate as well. And the wife here, as I do. Yes, there we are.
I think it's good afternoon, Chancellor, Vice-Chancellor, graduates, graduands, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you, Nigel, for that introduction and kind words. For me, it's a great honour to be here today, and I'm very grateful to the University for the recognition that it has bestowed upon me. So 36 years ago, probably almost to the day I would imagine, I attended my own graduation ceremony in this very hall. And it would have been impossible for me then to predict my career and my life thereafter. But one thing is really clear, and that is that my time at this university and my adult years living in Leicester was a formative period in my life, and much of my subsequent success stems from my Leicester days. My time at Leicester University provided me with more than the degree in psychology. As Nigel has said, I met my wife here. She's sitting up there in the balcony in the first week of the first term. She was reading law, and we were both staying in the same hall of residence, College Hall, which I think is now called College Court. We both graduated in July 1980, and we got married at Leicester Registry Office in the same year. We settled in Leicester, and we bought our first house in the city, believe it or not, for a sum less than £20,000. My intention and the degree choice was to have a career in marketing, but this never happened. And albeit a Hobson's choice, I trained to become a chartered accountant at Thomson McLintock, which is now part of KPMG, and actually my office was just a short walk from here at the top of Newark. Becoming an accountant was one of the best decisions that I ever made, even if it was by default, but it was clear to me as I went through my articles that I did not want to stay in the profession. One of the audit clients was the Anglia Building Society, and on the back of that experience, I secured a role at Anglia Building Society, which is based in Northampton, in 1985. And then 2 years later, Anglia merged with Nationwide. So started my career with Nationwide, which spanned 30 years. In the early years, I played to my strengths as an accountant, working in audit and finance functions. But my career developed into a corporate finance role, buying and selling assets and subsidiaries, and helping to reshape the Nationwide group and the business model. This included 4 years as a managing director of a corporate buy-to-let subsidiary up in Glasgow. And it was there that I acquired a taste for running a business, and at that point my career changed tack from being an accountant to becoming a business leader, although the accountant in me always remained strong. I returned to mainstream Nationwide in 2001. 15 months later, I joined the board as the Group Finance Director, and 4 years after that, on the 1st of April 2007, at the age of 48, I became the Chief Executive of Nationwide. Let me tell you briefly about Nationwide. It's the UK's largest mutual organisation. It's the second largest provider of mortgage and savings products, and importantly, it's a building society, not a bank. It is mutual because it's owned by its customers. The society works entirely on their behalf and generates profits to invest for the future and to sustain growth, but not to profit shareholders. If you think crowdfunding is a modern invention, I would ask you to think again. In essence, Nationwide is a crowdfunder and has been since its inception in 1846. It takes in deposits from savers and it uses those funds to provide mortgage finance for home ownership. My mandate as Chief Executive in 2007 was to modernise the society whilst remaining true to its heritage and mutual status. It was clear that without modernisation, the society was unlikely to remain successful. I led the biggest ever transformation programme and investment programme, embracing our systems, the infrastructure, our processes, the culture, the leadership team, and including our proposition to our customers. It was a programme that was costing in excess of £1 billion. It involved a strategic merger with the Portman Building Society, which was the biggest transaction of its kind, and was anticipated to take several years to complete. And then Thursday, the 13th of 2007 happened. It's an important date because it's my wedding anniversary, but it's also the date that Robert Peston announced late that evening on the BBC that the Northern Rock Bank was about to fail. And so started the biggest, deepest financial crisis that the UK has ever experienced. The first 6 months were characterised by denial, nobody sure, nobody accepting the enormity of what was going wrong. By the end of 2008, the unthinkable had happened, and household name institutions such as Lehman's, Royal Bank of Scotland, Halifax Bank of Scotland had failed, along with a myriad of smaller institutions, including the old Leicester Building Society, which by then was the Alliance and Leicester Bank. I found myself thrust into a series of roundtable crisis talks at Number 10 and at Whitehall, sitting alongside the bank chief executives such as Fred Goodwin from the Royal Bank of Scotland and Andy Hornby from Halifax Bank of Scotland, and engaging with the Prime Minister, the Chancellor and other senior politicians and civil servants to work our way through the crisis. And I have to say, of all the people that I worked with during that period, the then Chancellor, Alistair Darling, is one of my heroes because of the way that he dealt with those unprecedented events. The mutual sector was not immune. Only one building society failed, the Dunfermline, but many had to be rescued by merging with stronger societies. Nationwide rescued the Cheshire and the Derbyshire in this fashion, and we also acquired the retail customers from the Dunfermline. And all of that happened in the space of 3 months. My focus shifted radically from the transformation to intensive management of the balance sheet and the liquidity, as well as providing support and leadership for the rest of the mutual sector. Nationwide survived the crisis with its honour intact, and I'm very proud of the role that we played to stabilise the mutual sector and also our impact on the real economy, because we continued to lend when the banks had retrenched. In the worst 4 years of the recession, the mutual sector accounted for 83% of all of the net mortgage lending in the UK, and Nationwide alone accounted for almost half of all net lending, facilitating home ownership, especially for first-time buyers, and providing a safe haven for savers. Today, Nationwide is thriving. We have 15 million customers, and that's a relationship with 1 in 4 households in the United Kingdom. We employ 17,500 people. We operate through 700 branches, the internet, the mobile app, and the telephone. Last year was a record year for the society. It lent the most it ever lent in a single year, which is 32.6 billion, taking total assets to 209 billion, and it made a profit of 1.3 billion, which will be used to support future growth and investment in the society. And to put 32.6 billion of lending into context, that's equivalent to about £18 million for every hour that we operated last year. So having become the Chief Executive on April Fool's Day in 2007, I retired on April Fool's Day this year. I do like symmetry. For those of you graduating from Leicester today, I congratulate you. I wish you well and every success as you commence your own careers. I would encourage you to have a career plan, but to take opportunity when it presents itself. Work hard, be decisive, take calculated risk, but not foolhardy risk. And most importantly, and linking back to my studies in psychology, develop and nurture your emotional intelligence, your EQ, because being able to create strong teams and winning the hearts and minds of those that are around you, they are critical success factors to becoming an effective leader in whichever field you choose. So thank you once again to Leicester University for inviting an old boy back. It's a very proud moment for me, and I am truly grateful. Thank you very much.